Hello, everyone, and welcome to Lifetime's webinar for adoptive families. Thank you for joining us for tonight's question and answer session. My name is Kim King, and with me is Libby Dennison, and we're excited to speak with you guys, answer questions that are on your minds, and just really help you get a good sense of what to expect and help ease your concerns, where you may have some concerns about various aspects of adopting, whether you're just starting out, already in your adoption plan, or walking through your match. We're here to help, so feel free to start typing in your questions. And for those of you who are newer to Lifetime, just starting to get to know us, you are welcome to complete our application online at lifetimeadoption.com/apply. That actually is the first step we request adoptive families to complete, and that has no obligation for you filling out the application. It allows us to explore further with you. When you have questions, we can shape the answer and the information and resources we provide for you to your specific needs and circumstances. Sometimes when someone asks a general question, it's just a little more helpful to know kind of like how old they are. Do they have other children? What preferences do they have in their adoption? So we can sort of just help shape things for them and provide a healthy expectation, let them know what we've seen over the years. So filling out the application definitely is a great conversation starter with Lifetime, and that's just it. Exploratory conversation. We have limited openings in our programs, and families need to make informed decisions, so it's basically opening the door to further exploration. So I encourage you, if you have not done so already, to fill out that application. And what you can expect after you fill out the application is that you will receive an email right away that is automated, and it'll have some information that you can read through, more information than just what's on the website, a little more specific detail. So you'll receive that email, and then usually the following business day we'll be able to email you personally or give you a call, let you know we received your application, and if there's anything that we need, more information, clarification, your application photo perhaps. So keep an eye on your phone and email that following day. And normally we have feedback for adoptive family applications within 1 to 5 business days. And you're always welcome to call or email and check in on the status. The email to our applications department is apply, APPLY, at lifetimeadoption.com. And the number here to Lifetime, the telephone number, is 1-800-923-6784. And also, if you've not already joined us on Facebook, please do so. That's a great way to stay in the loop, be a part of the conversation within the adoption community. You can find our Facebook page at facebook.com/open.adoption. So that's facebook.com/open.adoption. Or, of course, as Libby is mentioning, you can contact your coordinator directly at Lifetime when you have questions. Contact her via phone or email or request to schedule a conference. We have an open door policy. If you've noticed that you get quick responses, timely responses, and that information is accessible, that's because we want to help you make informed decisions, and we have the same quality of services for adoptive parents and for birth moms as well. So hopefully that covers as far as getting started and how to reach us. Libby, I see we already have plenty of great questions rolling in, a great variety of questions as well.
Well, and I love this too because some of the people who are already asking questions were people that emailed earlier to say, we'll be there. So it's so great to see you here and participating already, and that's really what tonight is about. So to paraphrase in general, there was one good question asking, what specifically are we going to cover tonight? And that's really up to our audience, which is why we love these calls, because we never quite know what we're going to get to cover. And so one of the things that I always see happening when we have these Q&As is people will ask questions that maybe other people didn't even think to ask yet, or maybe they were a little too timid to ask. Or what happens lately, and I love seeing this happening more and more, is audience members chiming in with their own answers as well and offering tips and resources and what worked for them. So we really welcome that tonight. But you're right, Kim, we already have some great questions. So there's some good questions in here about home studies. So maybe we can just talk a little bit about home studies. In general, what can a family expect when it comes to the home visit part of a home study?
So the social worker that you hire to conduct your home study for you will come to your home. They will want to interview you as a couple, together and separately, or as an individual if you are a single adoptive parent. So they'll have that face-to-face interview with you in your home, as well as take a look around the home in general, not peeking into every single nook and cranny, but they're basically looking to see that everything is in order in a typical home that is a safe, healthy environment for a child. If there are any pets, they'll want to meet those pets. Any members of the household will be a part of your adoption, whether they are other children already in the home, an in-law or grandparent, or an adult sibling or roommate. Anybody in your household will be a part of your home study to some degree, especially including background checks. Everyone has to be up to date on their vaccinations, animals and human alike. So pretty much it'll be a time to have that social worker into your home, sit down, have conversation. She'll have questions for you. It'll most likely be something that you'll be anticipating, maybe even somewhat anxiously, and you'll have prepared your home as if you were having company, but it's not as though you have to have it white glove inspection ready, as Marty always says. So it's more just getting to a time to get to know you.
Which I appreciate when you throw in that reminder, because I know for me, I'm the type of person that you even like to know when people are coming over to your house, period, because you want to at least pick up or get the dishes out of the sink or things like that. But we've often heard from social workers who complete home studies that, yes, they want to see that you keep an average clean house, but they're not coming over to criticize you or point fingers and say, what kind of mother are you going to be if you can't have the laundry folded and in the drawers all the time, They're realistic. They want to see how you live your life. And that's also a good reminder when they come back to visit after you adopt, because you're going to have a baby in your home and you may not be able to keep things up quite like you were before you brought a newborn home. Whether it's your third or your first or anywhere in between, the social workers are usually understanding, but it's some of the major things. And one of the examples I love to go to is not so much about cleanliness or picking up, but one family I remember, they were organized, they had everything in its place, and the home study worker came, said, this is great. They said, hey, would you like to see the child's nursery that we've planned? And she said, yeah, and they walked her in there and said, this is the nursery. And the social worker began opening closets and saw that they had a gun safe in the nursery closet. And, I mean, it was all locked and everything, but it's not like they were rejected or denied. They were just instructed, the gun safe is probably better placed in a garage or some other room than the child's nursery, the child's living space. So it was more an educational opportunity for them. But it's kind of an extreme example, but it's a good example because, again, they're looking to celebrate your adoption. They're not coming over to poke and prod and make you feel like you don't qualify. Because it's as much about educating you too. And I've heard from most people that they usually sweat the visits much more than they should have, and they usually are telling other adoptive parents, it's not that big of a deal, just be yourself, relax, be hospitable, it'll go fast. So that's good to know. And I know we had another question too about the timing. Let's see. So Kim, and maybe because we don't really talk about this a lot, because I know it can vary just sometimes even depending on the individual, but in your experience, how long does it take to get home study ready when someone says, okay, I've applied for the home study, and then they move forward? On average, what do you see with families?
Well, most social workers are able to complete home studies within 6 to 8 weeks for private interstate adoption. If it's international or foster adoption, You may have a different timeline to expect. There may be more classes, educational training to go through over a period of time, for example, in foster adoption. So you may hear that those home studies can take several weeks, months even. What also can cause a home study to maybe take a little longer is the social worker's schedule and how it may or may not mesh with your schedules. Because if you're not able to schedule that first home visit for the next couple of months, maybe if she has a heavy caseload, is planning on a vacation that's going to be, she'll be gone for a few weeks, that can drag out the time frame. But typically, if everything is moving as it should be 6 to 8 weeks. Some can even be completed in 4 to 6 weeks. But I think a 2-month time frame is ideal. And when you talk about timing for your adoption, many people also want to know, well, how soon should we start the home study? And there's not a pat answer, but there are certain indicators that could lead you in a certain direction. And your coordinator here at Lifetime can certainly understand the circumstances of timing that you're working with and what your goals are, what your capabilities are right now in adoption, what's on your plate, that type of thing. Or if you have any changes, such as moving. If you're in the military and you just got to your new duty station and you know you're going to be here for another 2 or 3 years, perfect timing. If you're 6 months out from moving, let's talk about that and see maybe if you might want to just start working on profiles and website, and then once you get to your new place, start the home study there, since home studies take about 2 months to complete, and they're time sensitive too. So you have to keep those updated. At Lifetime, we require annual updates, so all your background checks have to be less than 1 year old, even if your state doesn't require it. Lifetime does require it. So, if you know it's going to take 2 months to complete your home study, but you're moving 6 months from now, you're only really going to use that home study for 4 months. Or if you know you're not actively pursuing your adoption for another 6 months or a year, maybe start it 2 months out from when you know you'll be actively pursuing your adoption. And this will help you save in your budget because you won't be paying for updates when you're not actually using your home study yet. Because updates do tend to cost a little bit, like for background checks and so forth.
Right. And sorry, my brain just totally lapsed.
I just saw a question.
Just to remember that you don't have to know everything. Communication is so important in any adoption journey. So whether it's with Lifetime or you work with someone else or you're doing things on your own and you're juggling all these professionals who are doing the legal and the home study, communication is key. So if you don't know when your home study needs to be updated or when certain things need to be filed or submitted, you just need to ask and be clear and find a way that works for you so that you can keep track of all the details and the dates so that you're not having to start things over. Because unfortunately, we have worked with people who they thought, oh, that's done, and I don't have to do that for another 1 or 2 years. And then they find out because they moved, now it's null and void, and they have to completely start over in another state, or now it's expired and they didn't realize that they had expiration dates. So communication is key. It's always okay to ask the person who's helping you through your adoption process, do you need anything else from me? Do you have everything you need? And then certainly in those times when you know you've submitted everything they've asked, it's also okay to follow up and say, it's been a couple weeks. I thought it was going to be done by now. Where do we stand on completing the home study, for example? So never be afraid to ask questions.
I was thinking of another thing about the home studies, and now I forgot it. But, like Libby said, the communication is key. Let us know when you have no, it wasn't, but we can certainly answer that. But when you know that you are thinking of moving somewhere, mention it to your coordinator before things are set in stone so that we can walk you through any planning parameters and be a part of that. And then also, if you have any change in status when you already have your home study completed, if you're questioning, well, is that going to impact my home study? Definitely ask. It's better to be safe than sorry, and we never mind receiving questions, better to be on the safe side and check with us so we can give you our best advice and, help you avoid pitfalls and delays and things like that. As far as referrals, Lifetime has referrals for home study providers all across the country, and when you're in our program as a contracted Lifetime family, we do provide those referrals to you. So when you start your program, one of the first things you'll do is have your welcome call with your coordinator, and that'll be a time where she will review things as far as your preferences, ensure that we have your best contact information up to date, answer questions, let you know what to expect next. And during that call is the best time to request that home study provider. If you have any extenuating circumstances when it comes to your home study, like a specific concern, talk with us about that, and sometimes we can even call around and see what a social worker might say about your specific circumstance or concern. So we're always happy to lend a helping hand, and we do provide referrals to our contracted families. And to answer your question, yes, we have them nationwide. And we do ask that families do their best to have an agency do their home study versus a private social worker. It just helps with a little added exposure in states that may require an agency home study versus one done by a private social worker. Another thing about finding a social worker to do your home study, and I mean, you can choose a home study provider that you feel comfortable with. You don't have to wait on our referral. If you found somebody that you like, they can get you in a timely manner, the price seems fair, everything's, good to go, as I say, then I would say, it would be okay. That's going to be fine with us as long as they're willing to send that over to us once it's done, and it can be used in a private interstate adoption. So, if you wanted to search for a home study provider in your area, but you're not finding anyone that appears to be in your area, still contact the ones you're finding in your state, because they probably have a social worker that covers your region, or as a family recently learned, they might cost less for the adoption, even though you're going to, or it might cost less for their home study, even though you may be paying their social worker to travel to you, versus the local agency that may cost more overall. So I hope, does that make sense, Libby?
Yes, I think so.
Okay.
And I love that we're having all these questions chiming in too. And we did a webinar before. The home study questions are hard in the sense that every state's a little different, so it's hard for us to get very specific. So that's why it's really important also to apply, because sometimes you get more specific information when we know more about where you live. We had a great question here about, so with a home study, do all the children in my home have to be up to date on their vaccinations? And I've heard this question before, and I think probably can vary regionally depending on the home study worker, and sometimes even depending on the home study provider. For instance, there are some home study providers that won't approve a family who believes in certain types of discipline, and so families who maybe come from more traditional backgrounds with spanking or slapping a hand or something like that, they might have to look for someone who will help them complete a home study. So sometimes it's up to the discretion of the provider doing the home study. And so if, for instance, you're a family who doesn't vaccinate your children, you need to be upfront with them right away to say, is this going to be a hurdle? Do we need to update our vaccinations before we can get approved? Because I've heard different answers on that. I couldn't say that there's one pat answer.
And didn't vaccinations come up on a recent webinar with one of our social workers, Linda? I think she had someone had asked, do we have to follow a set schedule for vaccinating our newborn that we've just adopted? And what did she say? Something?
Yeah, exactly. Not necessarily. I think it was, are you seeing the doctor regularly? Is the doctor aware of your child's health? Are there any red flags or concerns? And certainly as a parent, you get the discretion over that schedule and over your child's medical care. So, again, they're reasonable. And what I love when we got to talk with her just about her experience through home studies and helping people through the process of finalizing adoption even was again, it's so easy to feel like the adoption process is all about judging and putting you through a microscope to say whether or not you're a good parent, when in reality the professionals that are involved are actually really excited to help you welcome a child home. And so they want to help you. They don't want to hold you back. So let's see. Oh, and while we're talking about home studies, here's a good question. Is it difficult to transfer a home study that was already completed with a foster agency if we want to do a private adoption? So I think we touched on that, but just to clarify, again, that can be regional too, right, Kim?
And it can be specific to the actual office you're working with and what policies they have. You know, over the years, we've gone through phases where I've heard family after family saying, you know, we were trying to adopt through the foster system, and for a variety of reasons, now we're adopting privately. But our social worker said we can't use our home study for a private adoption. It was only for foster adoption. Now recently, within the past few months, I've been hearing a few more than usual families saying, actually, I already asked my social worker through the foster system if I could use the home study for private adoption, and they said yes, and here are some of our parameters. Like, for example, one family shared with me that, okay, after 6 months of trying, well, I'm assuming they meant, well, they said after 6 months you can use it for a private adoption, and perhaps there's like a nominal fee to get that released, and you would just need to make sure they update it to include that you can adopt private interstate, not just locally through the foster system. So as long as it meets what we're looking for and that it's for a private interstate adoption, they'll send us a copy of that with all the supporting documents, and it has the background checks and everything, state, local, federal child abuse clearances that are less than 1 year old. We're happy with that. That was the thing I was going to say, is that when it comes to the timing of when to start your home study, I remember you want to first choose what path you're going to take in your adoption. Are you going to adopt through the foster system, private adoption in the U.S., or international adoption? Totally, you know, 3 different kinds of home study, different wording, different home study providers qualified for those different home studies. So choose the path, and then choose who's going to assist you. Are you going to go through an attorney, a facilitator, an agency, a coaching or consulting program? Are you going to do it privately on your own? Because once you choose that path, and specifically who, if anyone, is going to be walking with you through the adoption, then you can follow their advice on or requirements as to what type of home study and who has to provide that for you. Say you choose a local agency a mile from your house. Well, they might require that all their families get their home study done right there through their own social worker. Whereas with Lifetime, we're a little more flexible, but if you're brand new, you may not know if you're working with Lifetime or not. You have to first apply, explore further, see if we're able to partner together, and then be able to start your home study once you know you're going to be working with Lifetime, and know that you have the freedom to choose whomever you'd like to do your home study for you. So I hope that helps a little bit.
And we had a follow-up question just with another special circumstance. Is it difficult to pass a home study if you homeschool your kids or plan to homeschool? This future mom had read that some social workers frown on that, but not all do. So again, it's going to be being upfront with them about your plans. You know, this is good advice that I always give to birth mothers, but it crosses over to adoptive parents well. Just be upfront about who you are and what you're looking for. Don't make anything up, and don't leave anything out, so that you can find the help that works for you. You know, that goes for even the kind of adoption search that you want. If you want to adopt through the state and you want to get a sibling group that's already in school, you know, then you're not necessarily going to want to do a private adoption with a place like Lifetime, because we're mostly working with pregnant women looking for newborn adoption placements. So there's all kinds of variables that come into play, and that's why it's so good to keep track of your questions, so that when you get to those different phases, you don't forget, oh, I forgot to mention that. I wonder if they actually work with families like us. Keep a list so that when you are getting to that home study phase, you don't forget to say, by the way, you know, where do you stand on this and that, because we want to make sure we work with someone that supports our family values too. and you don't want to fake them out. You never want a birth mother or your home study professional to just have lip service from you. Don't say things just because you think it's going to move you forward.
Mm-hmm.
You know, actually, I mean, um, we have in the past even worked with people who they told us that they lived in a certain state because they wanted their adoption to go with that state law, but they didn't live there. So when it came to finalizing their adoption, there was all this confusion, like, well, we thought you lived in this state, and now you're saying you don't, and you never did, and so how did this even happen? And there's a lot of backtracking. You put your adoption at risk when you leave information out that's vital. And so the best thing to do is to be upfront about who you are, your circumstances, where you live, and follow the adoption law that's relevant to you and the type of adoption that you want to complete so that nothing gets in the way of you getting to bring your forever baby home.
We had a comment that came in, and I really want to speak to this. I'm not staring at the comment right now, but it was basically, you know, this is overwhelming. We're not sure what paths to adoption or what type of adoption specifically we want to pursue. So it sounds to me like they've arrived at, yes, we want to adopt, or we are strongly considering adopting. What I would recommend is taking 10 to 20 minutes, fill out the application on our website, lifetimeadoption.com/apply. Fill that out as a couple, if you are a couple, to the best of your ability. You don't have to know everything. You don't have to be sure of everything. Just put down the answers to the best of your ability, and then let us take a look at that and talk with you further and see, you know, for example, if there are some indicators, such as the age of child you're seeking, the quantity of children you want to adopt, the races that you're seeking, whether or not you're open to open adoption. We can shed light on these things, share what we've seen, and let you know if these are the types of adoptions that we see or if there's another path that you should pursue. And the comment ended with, you know, what makes Lifetime so special, or what makes Lifetime the best? And, you know, if a family is pursuing foster adoption, we're not the best because we don't assist with foster or even international adoption. When it comes to private domestic adoption, primarily open adoptions, voluntary relinquishments, this is our area of expertise. So we can speak to this type of adoption and help you identify whether or not this is a good fit. And it's also about whether or not we have the opening available and if we can meet the expectations or requirements that you have. So we need to delve a little further before we can really help you determine if we are the best for you. Now, we certainly believe that the way we do things, I mean, it's very secure, stable. You can count on it. You can know that birth moms are getting the care that they need, compassionate support. If those kinds of things matter to you, and if you prefer more of a step-by-step guided approach, then I would say definitely explore further. If you really have your mind set on primarily a newborn or young infant, we're probably in your ballpark. We work with birth moms and families all across the country, so you don't have to worry, well, I mean, am I going to be limited to just a local area? If you're a little sketchy on traveling, we can talk with you about that because most families travel just one time for their adoption. So there are just some different things that we can get to know you and your needs, and that's where the application is really instrumental. So I would highly recommend filling that out, and then just send me an email, kim@lifetimeadoption.com, since I know you were on the webinar, and I can search for your application and just take a look and give you some insight, hopefully, because I certainly don't want you to feel overwhelmed.
Exactly. And what I actually love about our application process, I can't say this enough, but it doesn't obligate you. It's really low pressure or no pressure. It's really about learning what you're looking for so that we can more specifically answer your questions. And that's because our goal is to help you find the right path, whether that's with us or not. And Kim and I, we talk a lot on webinars. Another good reminder is if you apply with us or you apply with a home study provider even, and then they tell you we can't work with you, that doesn't mean that someone is saying you're an unacceptable human being who will never raise a dog. You know, I mean, we're not telling you you're going to be a bad parent or that you'll never adopt. We're telling you this may have just been a stepping stone on the way to the right answer to help you reach the child you want to adopt. So not to be discouraged when you do come across no's, because every no is going to lead you to a yes also. And also the timing, it's totally within your say. Just because you apply today doesn't mean by the end of next week you've got to decide whether you're moving forward with Lifetime or any other professional. It's a personal journey, and we understand that. And so if you are on the call tonight and you're thinking, well, I've kind of been peeking at your website a while, or I've been attending webinars, and I haven't applied because here's another common reason. I haven't applied because we were waiting to get finances in order before we even start applying with professionals. It's a really good tip to apply with your professionals while you're still getting other things in order, because then at least when you're ready to move forward, you know who you want to work with. And you know which doors are open and which avenues to take. Plus, Kim and her team, they work closely with each other, but also with other adoptive parents who have made it into Lifetime's program and then completed their adoptions, and they're constantly going back and reviewing resources available to help more people fund their adoptions or get the right home study referrals. So it only benefits you to apply. There's no harm.
Yes.
It will only help you.
And you know, there have been many times over the last 11, 12 years where families have taken, that first step and filled out the application, and then a year later, now they're ready. And they've used that 6 months or 12 months or however many months or possibly years it's been to work toward their funding or work on other aspects of their adoption readiness, so to speak, like pre-adoption readiness, like going through infertility or checking out other options that may be available to them, waiting for their spouse to catch up with them emotionally or mentally as far as grasping and accepting adoption. But they'll use that time as an incubator. It's a safe incubator time frame. What I mean by that is you are in that period, that season, to where you are not going to be actively pursuing your adoption as far as like getting matched any day now. So use that time wisely to observe adoption professionals, be a part of the adoption conversation in the adoption community, evaluate what path you feel would be a fit when you get there. Read through paperwork, get your questions answered, attend these webinars. There are a lot of things that you can do while you're in that incubator, as I call it. And then, you're ready to go. You've groomed yourself. You're ready. You're very well informed about adoption, and you're confident in your choices. You're confident in open adoption, your positive adoption language, the different ins and outs of different types of adoption professionals. So you've been able to learn more before you jump into something. And some families are ready and confident from the get-go, and that's okay too. I just wouldn't want you to be discouraged if you're looking at a 6-month or more time frame before you're going to be ready to actively pursue your adoption.
Right, right.
I've had a lot of questions lately about age that someone will call, and it's not just one person. It's like so many people within just the past week have called in saying, we know we don't have much time. We're anxious because of our ages. And I'll say, well, how old are you? Let's put this into perspective here. Let me tell you whether or not you should be concerned about your age. And they'll say, I'm 38, I'm 45, or maybe I'm going to be 49 this year, or my husband's 51. And those are all still within the window of time. In fact, being in your 30s and 40s is quite common. Early to mid-50s is still possible, although there are many organizations out there that do have more firm guidelines on age, or even actual age limitations for adopting a newborn or even just to be in their program. There are programs that do not have strict requirements and that will look at things as a whole for you. That doesn't mean you have 5 years to get the ball rolling. I mean, certainly nobody's getting any younger here, and you want to start parenting sooner rather than later and start spending that time in your life with your child. So I'm not saying put it off, but don't let your age stop you. Reach out, get your questions answered. Call in and be a person that says, I'm this age. Is it a concern? You know,
Well, and
and
I've
let
been
us
getting that
help you.
question
Yeah.
from people who think they're too young also. I've been getting some adoptive parents
Interesting.
in their 20s who have wondered, is this going to hurt us? Are we
Oh.
too young to adopt?
Mm.
So whether you fall on the young end or the more mature and experienced end of the age range, it never hurts to just ask and just know that other people have had the same questions, and um, nobody's judging you if you call and you say, "Gosh, I'm going to be 40 next month," you know, and I'm starting to research. No, totally normal. And birth moms look for families of all different dynamics. Some birth mothers want families who have been married a long time, and um, maybe they are older and more settled in their jobs or in their home, or um, maybe they want newlyweds because they feel like everything's fresh and um, you're just ready to go, or maybe they want people who already have children because you have experience with parenting, or maybe they want their child the firstborn. Maybe they want a young couple because they really identify with that. Maybe their parents are really young, their grandparents are really young. You never know what's going to stand out, and so important not to get discouraged assuming what these mothers are looking for, because
And
there's so many reasons, so many reasons.
so many. And I had a family recently ask me, speaking of birth moms, because the whole time I was talking about age, I was thinking, you know, we need to point out that what we're looking for in our program is what birth moms are looking for. So they drive our program essentially as far as what openings we have available. A family recently asked me, you know, well, it seems like you have a lot of resources for adoptive parents, but what about the birth moms? Would you say that you're more adoptive family focused or more birth mom focused? Libby, what are your thoughts?
Can you rephrase it? Because I was also looking at another question related to what birth mothers are looking for, so I'm kind of like juggling two thoughts.
That's okay. So like when it comes to, is Lifetime more adoptive family focused or is Lifetime more birth mom focused?
Well, I mean, in my role at Lifetime, I honestly see that it's both, but because of the nature of how we know the support systems and the decision making and the life circumstances going on between, you know, when you compare adoptive parents to birth parents are typically in more of a crisis mode.
That's true.
They're usually in a situation where they may be heavily beating themselves up because they're in a situation they never imagined. So giving her the support, the time, the presence of mind, and really making sure that sometimes we like to say we like to help her stabilize her situation enough so that she can make a decision for the long term and not just getting out of this immediate crisis situation. So an example of what that could look like is if she's having a hard time getting to the food bank or putting food in her house, you know, we can send her food from our food bank and stock her cupboards so that she can eat, have a full belly, not stress about when am I going to have my next meal or feed my kid. Maybe even just clothing. Sometimes we talk to birth moms. I had this one birth mom call and she said, all I have that fits me right now is a swimsuit, and I cannot be walking around pregnant and in a swimsuit all the time. And I was like, that's so true. So we have maternity clothes that we can help these women with. Sometimes, you know, there's other ways to help. And so, you know, the technical answer is that I guess we could say we do put a focus on birth mothers as a priority, but I feel like that's not necessarily a fair answer because the way Lifetime is structured, we have an entire team devoted to supporting and helping the parents while they're getting ready to adopt and while they're waiting to be chosen for a match. So they're getting just as much of a focus. Plus, you know, you're on a webinar right now that is accessible to anyone thinking about adoption, but we also host at least 2 webinars a month that are only open to families waiting with Lifetime. So they're getting additional webinar support too, to be part of a community. So I hope that makes sense. It's really to the benefit of your adoption to put your birth mother first and not make it all about the baby. Whenever a woman feels like her adoption coordinator or the adoptive parents are just solely focused on what's the health of your pregnancy? You know, how's the baby? Is the baby kicking? Do you know the gender? Do you know the size? And, you know, all these things related to baby, baby, baby. She starts to feel like, well, what am I, just a machine? You know, I'm a person going through a real experience that is hard, it's complicated, and it's meaningful. And so she wants to know that you and we are there for her. And that looks different for every woman too. And so that's why, you know, I would never just give a pat answer. But going back even to what these women are looking for, that's another area that we focus on too. We're not going to try and say, well, gosh, I know you told me you're looking for an African-American married couple for your African-American baby boy, but I really want you to consider this single Hispanic woman to adopt your baby. You know, sometimes there may be exceptions where we need to talk to her about other adoptive families that maybe she didn't think of yet, but the majority of the time we want to honor her wishes. We want to show her families that she's looking for. Otherwise, she's going to feel like, did you hear me? Do you even care what I want for my baby? And whenever a woman feels pressured in any way during her adoption process, she's more likely to change her mind. But when she feels supported and as if she got to say and she got to decide the timing, when things happened, how things went down, who adopts her baby, I mean, all of those things play into the chances that she's more likely to feel comfortable and safe and secure about moving forward with the adoption. So, you know, I had a question come in just even asking as we were talking about different things like homeschooling and vaccinations, and then this was even asking, you know, with respect to birth moms, you know, are they only looking for families who attend church? And the answer to that can vary because just like I was saying earlier with respect to age, there are birth mothers out there who, yes, they want a faith-filled family who attends church regularly, maybe even has Bible study once a week. But then there are other birth mothers who think, I grew up, I believe in God, I have a faith, but I don't care if my child goes to church. You know, that's not necessarily a criteria that's going to knit your family in or out. So there's all these little details, even to having pets. Yesterday we hosted a webinar with one of our birth mother coordinators, and Diane reminded us how sometimes we get birth moms who want a family with pets. They say, oh, I loved growing up with a dog. I definitely want to make sure that my child grows up with a family pet. But then we get other birth moms who say, me and my other 3 kids all have allergies to dogs and cats, and I want to make sure that I choose a family who has no pets in the home and never plans on having pets in the home because I know this baby will also have these allergies. So again, this all comes down to her choice, which puts the focus back on her and what does she want to do. And that's truly, I think, one of the greatest benefits of Lifetime is that we're about honoring her decisions. And that's how we're looking at applications too. We're looking at, are the women who are calling us looking for families like you? It's not, are there ever women looking for families like you, but it's the women that we're hearing from. Are they looking for families like you? Because if not, then there's a better option for you in your adoption goals. Because we'd hate to tell someone, oh, we think that you could succeed, and meanwhile we fully know that we're not getting any opportunities to adopt that fall within what you're looking for. You know, we don't want to see families just waiting and waiting unnecessarily. We want to know, have confidence that you're going to adopt.
And sometimes that can be frustrating in the application process for adoptive parents because they're looking and they're saying, well, this is the ideal program for me. I really want to work with this specific organization. But meanwhile, that organization just doesn't have the opening. If they're being honest with you and they're saying, no, I'm sorry, we just don't have the opening, take their advice. You know, follow any resources that they do provide, because if they're keeping your best interest in mind, they're not just going to blindly accept you into their program. They'll want to know a little bit about you first, assess who they're already working with, what birth moms or adoptions they are seeing, and then, you know, share with you whether or not they feel it's in your best interest. You don't want to put a square peg into a round hole, because even though it may feel good in the moment to get what you're requesting, in the long term, how healthy is that for your adoption when the adoption professional themselves is not confident in pursuing your adoption for you? So hopefully adoption professionals in the adoption community can have that level of integrity and really put the needs of those families first. And like here at Lifetime, we talk about it as, you know, if we can't help you, we want to just set you free to go find the place that can help you, you know.
Exactly. We're getting a lot of good questions about open adoption too, and you know, if Lifetime only works with open adoption, or what to expect with visits, or the kind of contact that come with open adoption. And these are all really great questions, and part of the reason that I love that we host so many adoption stories, because there's all kinds of different adoptions. Off the top of my head, I'm thinking of one family we hosted a webinar with earlier this year, Ryan and Laura, and they described open adoption, and it's really just more texting once in a while, email, mostly email, I think, and that birth mother does not want to have a lot of contact outside of just send me some photos and email and some updates that way. While there are other adoption stories where they just become so much like extended family that, you know, now they're going to their child's birth mother's college graduation or to her wedding, or they're going, you know, sometimes there's the extreme case where they're taking vacations together, but there's everywhere in between. And I think that's, honestly, that's usually what I tell birth mothers too, is the reason I love open adoption is because there's no two adoptions that are the same. It's really something that works for everyone that's involved in that particular child's adoption. So if you're on the call tonight and you're thinking, I've heard about visits, is that the same thing as visitation? And whenever people say visitation, I always think of like having joint custody in a divorce, where, you know, one parent gets visitation, or they get custody of the child every other weekend or for 4 weeks out of the summer or something like that. Open adoption is not like joint custody. Open adoption is not co-parenting. These women, they want you to be mom. They want you to be mom and dad. So when they say, I would love to have visits once a year, it's like getting together with family or cousins or friends. It's all together. And that varies for everyone. Sometimes they're just meeting at a mutual place for one day. Other times they plan maybe a whole weekend of different activities, going to the zoo or the water park or having a family barbecue or something like that. It really varies depending on birth mother's comfort level, the adoptive parent's comfort level, and it's so important to talk about that in the beginning of a match, because you don't want there to be any misunderstandings once you do adopt, because you can't work backwards always, and you don't want to feel like, okay, well, now I thought it was going to go one way, but it's going a completely different direction, and we wouldn't probably have said yes. But I always encourage people, if you are not sure about open adoption, the best thing to do is to keep learning about it, because usually where people are today, there's a lot of stereotypes and misunderstandings about open adoption, and so people kind of get their hackles up, they put their guard up, and they think there's no way I could do that, or it must be so confusing, but all they're hearing are hearsay. You need to hear from actual people living with open adoption and look at what that's like for them on a daily basis or a yearly basis, because it can be really positive and beautiful, and it can feel comfortable like extended family. And I always love the comparison to extended family, Kim, because I have extended family that I love, but I really only see them maybe a couple times a year. I keep in touch with them on Facebook. We email big news to each other, maybe even text just to check in once in a while. But with my extended family, I love and care for them as much as my immediate family, but I'm not hanging out with them all the time, you know. So when you compare open adoption to that kind of relationship, I think it takes the pressure off, because then it becomes something you can actually picture.
There is a whole foundation of understanding that families should reach before they can really, I mean, I don't expect adoptive parents who are brand new to the concept of open adoption and adoption in general to really feel comfortable with that right off the bat. I know that there are concerns that we need to address, like, well, how will I talk to my child about adoption? Won't it be confusing? How do I introduce the birth mom to this child? You know, do we have to travel over there every year? You know, what if she's not in a healthy place for us to have contact like that? Or what
Really
if
good
this is a
question.
foster adoption? You know, all these questions, we have answers for that to help ease your concerns. And once light has been shed on every corner of open adoption, families, more often than not, almost every family feels totally comfortable. They don't even know what they were worried about. Even though the concerns are logical coming into it, once you know how it really works in reality, and especially with our voluntary relinquishments primarily at birth, you find there's really, what was I worried about? And then once you actually meet the one birth mom who's placing her baby with you, and you understand where she's coming from, and you can see the purity of her intentions, you really know that you have nothing to worry about with that. So what I would recommend, if you're feeling a little uneasy or you have questions about open adoption, email me. I have open adoption resources that I can send to you that you can read through and programs you can listen to. Maybe taking 2 to 3 hours to just have a crash course in open adoption in general could really shed light on things so that you're not missing out on great opportunities in open adoption that, you know, you were just missing out on that because of fear that hasn't been
Right.
addressed.
I
So
love
just
that you
email
said
me,
that.
mkim@lifeadoption.com, and I will be happy to send you the open adoption resources that I've just kind of put together, you know, just based on what we've seen here at Lifetime and just some concerns that you may have, and answer those questions. And I mean, there's no better way to feel more comfortable about open adoption than to think about it from the birth mom's point of view. And I'll just leave it at that for now.
Absolutely. That's so true. But I also love the questions you brought up, Kim, because they are valid.
Mm-hmm.
And we never want a family to feel, just like a birth mother, we never want you to feel pressured into a certain type of adoption or a certain direction. And so that's why, time to time we work with families. They apply, they learn more, and then they still say, you know what, open adoption is not for us.
Mm-hmm.
And that's okay. It's better to admit that and to decide what is right for your family than to move forward with something that you feel you're forcing yourself to do or that you don't really appreciate, because in the end you're going to end up hurting a birth mother who thought that you were interested in that, and it'll be a confused mixed signal, kind of like dating somebody that you're not on the same page with, you know. You want to admit to yourself first the type of adoption that's going to be best for you, and then find the avenue to get there. You know, if closed
Mm-hmm.
adoption is something you're more comfortable with, then maybe you need to start researching adoptions through your foster care system or international adoption. There's other options. So don't beat yourself up, but also be encouraged to ask the hard questions and learn as much as possible, because you just never know. I just imagine, like you said, Kim, if it's an answer based on fear, you could be totally missing out on something amazing. But if it's an answer that's been researched and you have made a heartfelt, honest decision with yourself about what works for you and your future family, then you'll find the right answer that supports that too. You need to have a positive experience and outlook on your adoption and not feel like you're dreading it or you're afraid of it or that you're kind of dragging your feet, because in the end, it'll just, mostly what I see with people who hold back in admitting what they're truly looking for in adoption, they usually end up with heartbreak.
Mm-hmm.
And we want to celebrate success, whether that's with us or that you find it in another path.
Mm-hmm.
So these are all really great questions, and we haven't really gotten to talk a lot about open adoption in this way in a while, so it might be time to, to do another webinar where we can go through the different aspects of that. Because like you said, Kim, one of the greatest questions we get, especially about open adoption, is how do I talk to my child about this? How do I explain who this other person is, this belly mama that we keep in touch with? How does that look to a child that's growing up with, this third person in the mix? And so we can talk about that more too, but definitely. And again, if you're on the call and you're thinking, well, I'm still on the fence about open adoption and that's why I'm not applying yet, this is another area. It's okay to apply before you're certain about what you want, because like Kim said, her experience is most families start out more conservative, more reserved when it comes to open adoption, and that's because they're just opening the gate to learn more and figure out the best direction to go.
Mm-hmm. And what I don't mean by that is, well, then let's start out with closed adoption, and then 6 months
Right.
later
No.
or a year later, if nothing happens, then we'll think about opening. What I mean is take the time to really learn about it now. Give it a chance. It doesn't hurt to get that information. Nobody's going to force you into an open adoption. You know, it's to your benefit to learn, so that, like I was saying, you're not making a decision based on fear. I mean, raise your hand if a decision based on fear has ever turned out well for you. You know, um, base it on fact. Do the research. We're here to help and make it easy on you. I mean, we will hand provide that to you, the information. And we know that it's important because in most private U.S. domestic adoptions, they do lean more toward openness, whereas with foster or international adoptions, they are more on the closed side of things. So there are different avenues for whatever you end up deciding is best for yourself and for the child. Most adoptive parents these days who are big on researching are deciding that, you know what, based on the research I've read, I know that open adoption is healthier for my child. I'd rather have them, be able to access their information, know their story, know their medical history, not have to search for their birth mom. But just knowing that doesn't get rid of all the, well, but what about this? What about that? And we can help address those for you. Marty Caldwell, our founder, she has 30 years of experience in adoption, and we definitely have great resources for you to answer those questions. And we can tell you, okay, in the last 5 years, in the last 10 years, have we ever seen a birth mom come back 3 years later because she saw a cute picture and decided, I want that baby back? No, we do not see that. But, let us know your fears and concerns. Be open with us. This is a safe place for you, and we feel great knowing we can help you with that. So just reach out and let us know what's on your mind.
Absolutely. Okay, this hour just flew. I just looked at the time.
This whole week has flown, Libby.
I love seeing all this. I mean, there's some of you typing in your questions 2 or 3 times because you're like, nope, make sure you see this, and I love that. We're trying to get to as many as we can, but we have filled our hour tonight, so I don't want to take up too much more of your time. I do love this one comment just talking about when we're referring to the focus that we can put on birth moms, the support we give birth moms. I love this comment from Jackie who said, birth moms are so important. That's why we love the idea and have the goal of open adoption. And I think probably that's the best way to sum up is if you have any hesitations, it really does help, like Kim said, to research what a birth mom's learning. And then also just think about the situations that you yourself would be in that would cause you to even think about adoption for your baby. It's pretty hard, I think, for most adoptive parents because they have the family support, they have steady jobs, they have insurance, they have a house with a rent or a mortgage that they can afford. They usually don't have roommates that are having to, help with rent and stuff. So when you can look at the circumstances that would drive a woman to start thinking about adoption, I think it gives a little bit more compassion to where she's at. And it's not like the old days where Heather made a great point. We did an adoption training with a pregnancy clinic the other day. And she said, the old days there was a lot of shame put on an unplanned pregnancy, especially with an unwed mother. But in these days, women of all ages, of all, married, single, in their teens all the way up through their 30s or 40s, if they get pregnant by surprise, there's resources, there's people that understand, there's so many ways to help. And so these women who are coming to adoption, they also know that those things are out there, but a lot of times that's either not enough to help them bring this baby home, or they want more for their baby, or for their own lives. And so the times have changed. No longer are women choosing adoption because it looks bad to raise a baby on your own. Today, they're choosing adoption because they think that that's the best way to give their child the life that they wish they could offer at the time, or that they just know that they're never going to be able to offer, or the life they may have wished they had themselves. And so when you start looking at things that way, it starts to change your perspective. And I always like to remind people on both sides, birth mother side, adoptive parent side, give yourself a little grace because it's pretty hard to imagine staying in touch with a stranger. But with open adoption, you get the opportunity to actually get to know each other before you're moving forward with that adoption, and that's what makes it easier. Like Kim and I often like to compare it to marriage. You know, it's pretty hard to go on a blind date and accept a marriage proposal. In fact, with my single girlfriends lately, I find myself saying, it's just a date, it's not a marriage proposal. You know, relax. You're not going to dinner and coming home with a ring. Like, you don't have to decide tonight if you're going to marry him, and that's the same thing with adoption.
So true. Another way of looking at it, too, that came up in one of my conversations a few days ago is, you know, when you first meet a new person, just in circles, wherever, at a friend's house or anywhere, when you meet a new person, you don't know right then and there if you're just going to be an acquaintance or lifelong best friends.
Exactly.
It's okay if you're just an acquaintance. You can keep in touch. It doesn't mean you have an influence on each other's lives.
Wave at church.
But what about that beautiful possibility that this might be something that blossoms into more on its own naturally over time when it's comfortable for both?
That's a great example. Yes. And that's true. I probably would admit myself that my closest girlfriends are people I actually never imagined staying in touch with.
Why not, Libby? No, I'm just kidding.
And I will admit that even my husband would tell you, but also one of my best friends from high school would say that at first they thought that I didn't like them because I was reserved and I held back. And so it's okay. It's okay even if you talk with a birth mother the first time and you're thinking, I'm not sure what she thought about us, or that was a little awkward. You know, be open to the next phone call, the next text, the next email, and see how it unfolds. But with Lifetime, part of the advantage in open adoption is that you have people like us that already know what you're looking for, and that we have already screened this mother too and found out everything about her situation as much as possible. And you get to know all of that before you even talk to her. So it's not even like a blind date. You already know about each other before you talk the first time. So you get that advantage of having introductions, but also knowing backstory on the birth mother, and it really gives you more than if you were just to make a new friend, because you're coming in with much more knowledge.
That's very true. Going into that first phone call with a birth mom before you have secured that match together, you're probably going to know more about her prior to that first phone call. You'll know more about her than you may ever know about some of your friends or family members, because we are going to have full disclosure with you and share everything we've learned, share the paperwork that she's filled out, her medical history, you know, things that maybe she hasn't told anybody else around her, that she's sharing with us in confidence, knowing that this is information that will be important to the adoptive parents. So just have that comfort in knowing, too, that we're going to walk you through it during the active adoption planning, on into the birth and beyond. You know, there are families and birth moms that choose to keep in touch with us. Sometimes there are little hiccups or social faux pas along the way that you need a little insight or a little pep talk, or maybe birth mom isn't ever acknowledging that you're sending the letters and photos that she asked for. You're diligently sending them on that schedule that she requested, and for 5 years you've been sending them, and then you call Lifetime and say, but she's never responded. Should I keep doing this? And then we can, you know, let you know, yes, absolutely. If they're not being sent back to you, then she is receiving them, you know, and if you haven't heard otherwise, follow through with it. She may just not have those words to know what to say in response, or she might be in a time where she can't really reply because she's got finals and a wedding to plan, or maybe her new spouse doesn't know about her adoption plan, or it could be any number of things. But just continuing to follow through with that. But that's just an example of, we're here for you on into the future. You're not going to call us one day and ask for help, and then we're not, and find that, oh, sorry, your adoption is over. We can't give you any advice. You know, we're here to help you become a part of our Lifetime family, and you know, we're happy to help when help is needed.
That's great. Well, I love all the follow-up questions coming in too. And so again, remember our phone number, 1-800-923-4232. 6784, and Kim has generously offered her email up several times. If any of you have questions about, I know we had a lot of questions about the different programs Lifetime offers to help, and also the fees involved, or what an average adoption budget looks like. And Kim and our applications team, they can all help with those questions too. But part of what helps us be more specific when you do have those questions, again, is applying. And I feel like we've talked about the application a lot tonight, which we don't usually do, but I actually think it's one of the greatest steps, because especially if you're just now beginning your research, you may not even know what questions to ask yourself yet, let alone the questions to ask professionals. And so filling out applications, and ours is free, by the way, so you're not losing anything by letting us know who you are and completing that application step. Sometimes, just filling out that application helps you learn where you need to learn more, or the things you need to ask yourself and decide about. So it really is a helpful first step, whether you work with Lifetime or not. So remember that you can access that application at lifetimeadoption.com/apply. And then call us, of course, if you have any questions we can answer for you one-on-one, or you can if you are already working with a coordinator at Lifetime, reach out to her and say, hey, I was on a webinar tonight and these questions came to mind and they couldn't get to them. So can you answer these for me? Or you can write to adopt@lifetimeadoption.com, and we can get you to the person who can answer best. So Kim, is there anything you want to add before we wrap up tonight?
No, there are just so many resources that we have to tap into. So if there's a specific area of adoption or concern you have, let us know that so we can answer it for you, or provide a resource, maybe an audio program that we can link you to, or a book that we can recommend. So just basically, don't be afraid to ask for help. You're gathering information. It's okay to ask questions. Learn as much as you can. Be informed.
Great. And if you have any ideas or questions or thoughts or feedback about tonight's webinar or for future webinars, I would love to hear them, and you can reach me, Libby@lifetimeadoption.com. A lot of you might already have my email because I sent out the reminders about tonight's webinar. So just keep in touch. Let us know how we can help, and let us know what your questions are. And I know that each one of you will find the right direction for your future adoption goal. So thank you all for being here tonight, and we hope to talk with you soon. Bye-bye.
Thank you, everyone. Good night. Good night. Good night. Good night. Good night. Good night. Good night.